Students can go through a whole course of study and not have the ability or place to practice and get immediate feedback.
That's like the DNA of our company, is around this idea of leveling the playing field, providing access, making sure that students have the resources they need to be successful in whatever path they're choosing.
We're excited to learn about the work that you're doing with institutions and learn more about how you're planning to scale in 2026. Hi, I'm Lisa March here at Partner in Publishing on our next episode of EdTech Elevated, and I'm joined by Kim Canning, VP of Partnerships at Kaplan. Kim, so excited to have you here. We've been partnering with you for a while. It's been long overdue that we have you on this episode. We're excited to learn about the work that you're doing with institutions and learn more about how you're planning to scale in 2026. Great to have you.
So nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Really excited to talk about Kaplan and what we're focused on, my team's focused on from a university partnership perspective, and how we work to support student success across the country. We've got a lot of momentum right now. I'm looking forward to 2026.
And we always talk about Kaplan is a really well-known brand. I used Kaplan when I was in high school studying for SATs and ACTs. I've got college kids. And really, it's been interesting because when I think of Kaplan, I think of me as a parent having to ensure that my kids are prepared for these standardized tests. I also know Kaplan to have test prep for a whole host of other industry specific certifications that span not just high school, but college and even adults in the workforce. But schools don't really necessarily offer this to students, and it could be so helpful. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe Kaplan's history and the evolution of going from consumer to institutions?
Yeah, so I can't count. I mean, I could never in my life count the number of people that say to me, "Oh, I took Kaplan." Oh, when you go to the dentist office, "Oh, I took Kaplan." Like everybody has taken Kaplan. So I think it's a really fair question. I will start with kind of where Kaplan started from. Stanley Kaplan went to CCNY in New York City, a CUNY school. He graduated. He was a pre-med student. He wanted to go to medical school. But he was Jewish. And because of Jewish quotas at the time, he was denied access, denied admissions to medical school. And so he really started test prep, Kaplan test prep, with the mindset of access. How do you provide resources to even the playing field across the board? And so that's really kind of that's like the DNA of our company, is around this idea of leveling the playing field, providing access, making sure that students have the resources they need to be successful in whatever path they're choosing. So I have worked at Kaplan for a really long time. And for probably the past 10 years, I have been part of the university partnership team, which really started as this kind of baby team. We would work with individual programs, post-bac programs, summer programs, programs supporting underrepresented students. And we really prided ourselves in the listening that we did with partners, the relationships that we built. And probably it's been 3 or 4 years ago, we started hearing from partners, how do we get more of these resources in more students' hands, right? Like, how do we make this more accessible? We want you to do this, take it to the next level, Kaplan. And so, out of these conversations, we internally started really thinking about, how do we take a university partnership and really blow it out of the water and make things accessible to the entire student body? And that's really how All Access was born, was feedback from our partners saying, we have students that need admissions prep to go into professional and graduate school. They need credentialing support so they can boost their resume as they enter the workforce. Skills development. So when they get a job, they have that EQ and they understand what it's like to be in professional environments. Licensure prep. So for, students that are going into nursing, which is such an important and field right now that's so hurting for nurses, right? So these licensures. So there's literally a path for all students, regardless of what path they choose as they're graduating. And to me, that is like, it's just so gratifying to be able to say to a university, we're not saying we're the, the the solution, but that we can be a really important component of that solution, is really just one of the best things that we've ever done, I feel like, at Kaplan. And I'm not biased
I
at all.
mean,
The United States Distance Learning Association is a nonprofit professional organization dedicated to serving the distance education community. Our mission is to enhance the quality of distance learning by empowering instructors and designers with leading-edge tools, partner education, training, and resources. We serve our members and partners by offering opportunities for community engagement, leadership development, EdTech discovery, and professional growth. Our ultimate goal is to ensure a superior experience and improved outcome for remote learners worldwide.
Learn more at usdla.org.
yeah, and it certainly resonates, right? I mean, students can go through a whole course of study and not have the ability or place to practice and get immediate feedback to even know where they need to improve or remediate. And at the end of the day, sometimes, or many a times, these tests are really big determining factors in whether all the work that's led up to this assessment is going to pay off. So, if you could talk a little bit about the types of preparation and how it helps students, and really your mission and vision on not just doing it for a certain set of students, but the opportunity that an institution really could help students afford if they do it at scale. Maybe how affordable it really can be, because some of us don't know.
Yeah, so I think something that, and I think this was part of the conversations that we were having with our partners, at the university level, there's a focus on academics. There's obviously a focus on helping students get a job, and schools want students to go on to medical school or law school. But there are these components to this, to these different paths that universities historically have chosen or have not been able to afford, or maybe didn't understand entirely how important these pieces are for students. And, I think there's also, depending on students, depending on socioeconomic experiences that students bring to the table, they also don't understand what they need, right? And so not knowing or not having the full understanding, not having mentors that can help them with those pieces, those resources, can deter them from even going down that path, right?
Kim, it seems like preparation, practice is really the culmination of all this time and energy students have spent sitting in the classroom, going through coursework, and then they have to take this assessment or get a certification or prepare for boards. And some students are just showing up, having not had exposure and practice. What are your thoughts on how institutions can better prepare students to succeed on these really critical certificates, assessments, credentialing? How does Kaplan help?
Yeah, so through the all access license, as I mentioned before, these kind of four pathways that really meet students regardless of the direction that they're going after graduation. Through the all access license on a campus, all students get access to that full portfolio of Kaplan products. And what was important to me when we were thinking through what all access could look like was that we could meet that it wasn't just focused on students going to medical school, or it wasn't just focused on nurses, that we really had all of these pathways, which, Kaplan's so uniquely positioned to provide that many pathways because of our product portfolio. And so, having the ability for a school to invest in an all access license gives students the option to take advantage of resources that they may not even realize they need, right? Because of socioeconomic experiences, not understanding how all these components have to come together. And I think when a university invests in that type of resource, they help signal to students that we're as invested as you are in getting to medical school, in getting your license, in getting a job, right? Again, we're not the be all end all solution. There has to be a lot of other components happening at a university for this to work. But it has historically been this place where schools have kind of expected, and I want to be careful here, expected or just didn't really understand how hard it was for students to access these resources. And so by providing that license to students, they're kind of removing a really large obstacle so students can continue on the path. Again, they have to have a lot of other components going for them, but it had, historically, and again, when we think about all access and why, our partners were saying to us, how do we give this to more students? That's where this all stemmed from.
We see the expectations changing for parents and students. They're picking institutions that help, I don't want to say guarantee, but improve their odds of getting a job when they're out of school. And like you said, there are a lot of different components, but certainly being able to have a credential or pass a test or be prepared to do better on a test than you otherwise would have. We see big investments in companies and solutions that are helping institutions connect education to employability. And then ultimately, that is an indicator of student success. When they graduate, they'll actually get a job. And there's certainly a lot of discussion around affordability and access. Um, Tell me a little more about, how Kaplan is really making this affordable. Um, I am familiar with $600 medical test prep off the shelf. How does that change when an institution makes it available to a student? And what are some of the different models that you've seen, success stories, maybe even tell us a school that you're working with that is making this available to everyone?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So, test prep, when we sell test prep, credentialing, licensure prep retail, it can cost anywhere from $500 to $3,500 for students, right? So that's a big range, but that's a lot of money. And, we hear from students, it's hard. We have a lot of students who are food insecure, housing insecure, struggling to pay student loans, all those things. And these resources become kind of a hidden cost of college that, again, going back to schools acknowledging that this is important for students, that this is one of those things that they need in order to be successful. And so when we think about all access, it's really kind of an economies of scale, right? We're opening this up across the university. And so we're really able to reduce the pricing, the cost to the university. So schools pay a flat fee, a yearly flat fee, and we base this on several things. There's not a one size fits all here at all. So we take into account student population, the products that a school wants. So we have our kind of standard all access package, which covers admissions prep, licensure prep, credentialing, soft skills development. But we also want to be really thoughtful with our university partners on what is a priority for them. So I can give you a couple of examples. NYU is a partner. When they came to us, after lots of discussion, they really decided that test prep, so MCAT, LSAT, GRE, those resources were their priority. And so we created a package for them that focused on those resources. After a year, we actually added nursing NCLEX to the contract, because as they started expanding this out across the school, the nursing school was like, hey, wait a minute, we'd like in on this. So that package that we do for NYU looks different from, what we do for University of Detroit Mercy, right? Who is focused on all four of those pillars of test prep, licensure prep, credentialing, and skill development. So we really try to understand what the priorities are. Obviously, we look at, like I said, student population, graduation rate, different things like that when we think about pricing. But we want this to make sense. And to me, that means that we're not just like cutting this. We're really spending the time to understand the goals of a university, where their priorities are, and what they can leverage the most for their student body.
One of the things I think is fascinating is the soft skills piece of this, right? We spend a lot of time on these foundational courses that are student success, like how do you manage your time and what's your first year as a freshman going to look like and how can you be successful? I see interns coming to us with just basic gaps in knowledge around like employability readiness. And so wondering, when we talk about soft skills, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so we have a pretty good mix of different products, but I will give you two examples of products and how schools have used them. So Hampton University and HBCU on the East Coast, when they signed on as a partner, we were sitting at a round table with the president and his staff. And there was a whole lot of debate. I mean, we literally had the contract on the table. There was a lot of debate back and forth. And the president said to us, so we were in the room for probably 45 minutes, an hour. And at the end of the day, the president turned to us and said, the most important thing to me is that we graduate students that are critical thinkers. And I love that you have a critical thinking course as part of All Access. And I want my team to figure out how do they incorporate that into first and second year experiences, because we are going to graduate critical thinkers from Hampton. And it gave me chills. I was like, okay, yes, let's do that. I can get on board with that. And so that's an example of one of the skills courses. Now, we have heard for years from advisors and different faculty on campuses that critical thinking is really this skill that is underdeveloped as students come into college. And schools have struggled with how do they focus on that, for students. And so we had created a critical thinking course more specifically to support students taking our MCAT course. But we have over the years made a version of that that's more test agnostic and more agnostic in general. So really can support that basic skill. And so, we've had schools use that in a variety of ways. And I just love the creativity. Again, I think part of that is listening to partners and being in that conversation and open to ideas. Another example, we had a couple of schools this past spring who were graduating seniors and had just come on as All Access partners. And so it was kind of a farewell gift, a graduation gift. They enrolled all their seniors in our Confident New Hire course. So, again, maybe critical thinking is something that is more freshman, sophomore oriented at a school. Confident New Hire is a great kick off, send off for somebody graduating and going directly into a career path. And so that's kind of where we're constantly thinking about, where do our products fit? And it can look differently at all different schools, right? But these are two really great examples of using those kind of soft skills resources that we have in different ways, with our partner.
Are you ready to elevate your brand and captivate your audience? At Partner in Publishing, our video marketing services are all about turning your ideas into captivating visual narratives. Whether it's a compelling promotional video, engaging social media content, or informative tutorials, we've got you covered. Our expert team works closely with you to create videos that not only look amazing, but also drive results. Don't just be seen, be remembered. Visit partnerpublishing.com today and discover how we can help you outshine the competition.
I mean, it's interesting. I hear a lot of this holistic student support, and that really encompasses all of that. Do well on your assessments, do well on the credentials, and then also be ready to get in front of an employer more confidently. And critical thinking is something that permeates once they get a job. So yeah, it makes absolute sense to me for sure. So talk to me a little bit about how you tailor Kaplan's offerings in your partnerships. What does it really mean to be student-centered, and how do you help a school lean into that philosophy and mission?
So, obviously we spend a lot of time before we sign universities on, as, conversations around what is their mission, what are their goals, what are the other big things that they're focused on. We spend a lot of time having those conversations with our pre-partners. I think I would be hard pressed to think of anybody who has said to me, I don't think all access is a good idea. Mostly we get, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, right? That being said, there are a lot of priorities at school. There's a lot of priorities for budget. There's a lot going on in the world right now, a lot of pressures on universities for a variety of reasons, right? And so developing that relationship with our partners is really important to me and to my team. Once we sign partners on, I feel like that's the time that we can then do the brainstorming and the really deep dives into, like some of those examples that I just gave you, like where can we be creative on your campus? Where can we think differently about a course that even at Kaplan, we hadn't thought that about using it in that way and to solve that particular problem. And so, in thinking about that impact, I think it's kind of the two sides of it. The one, understanding our partners and what's driving their decision to say yes to all access. But then even as important, maybe even more important, is that with the subsequent work we do with our partners to really help them embed these resources in the right way, because we do not want this to be just a website that nobody goes to or thinks about, or, we want this embedded in departments and in schools and, with programs. And, we've just found that the best way to do that is to spend time with our partners and really dig in and know that it's potentially going to look different at every school.
I mean, one of the things I can tell you from even my own experience, having taught at a community college, is there are just not enough places and ways to help students do drill, skill, and practice. And so if these are resources that universities could be providing faculty also, students come to you and want to know how best to be prepared and how can they be successful and how can they not have to pay for the exam again to get a better score. And there's nothing new in emphasizing the more you practice, the better you're going to do. And so I'm imagining that having access to be able to do this over and over again just makes everybody more successful in the long run.
Yeah. I'll just tell you, there's a kind of another example of how we've worked with partners. It's like a version of all access. So UAB, University of Alabama, they spent a year creating a pre-med course, and they embedded our MCAT course in this course, which is a 4-credit course. They started with 90 seats, and within like 3 months, they upped it to, it was either 130 or 150. Exactly what you're saying, the idea of more embedding it more with faculty in the course, and that it's more of a not, I don't want to say requirement, but what students do, right? It's just another version. And actually, we have another partner in Florida who is going to launch a similar type program in the spring. So, again, it's the creativity of I think once universities, and maybe this goes back to what you said at the beginning, once universities really see past you student have to go and figure out how to buy Kaplan or some other resource, but that they see us as a university partner, there are these kind of endless ways of partnering, of using the resources in different ways that I think that's exciting. I mean, it's stuff we've talked about internally, but now being able to see the fruit, that actually come true is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about affordability, but one of the things we can't afford is to not help students be successful when it could be a fairly easy way to point them to how and where they could figure out what it is they need so that they can do better right away. Yeah. So the other thing was, this isn't just for traditional students. Tell me more about kind of beyond the traditional student and how you're partnering with institutions.
So we include alumni in our work, which in our partnerships. And so, I think this does several things. It keeps alums tied to the universities, right? It's such a great resource. There are, and we've heard this from our partners, there's certainly a lot of students who graduate and need a gap year for whatever reason, right? But they still need those resources. They need test prep, they need credentialing, they need all of it, licensure prep. And so to be able to have access to this after they take a gap year, they are more clear about what they want to do, what they want to accomplish, having those resources available to students after they graduate and leave campus has been pretty impactful and exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine, most of the calls you're getting from the alumni departments at schools are to give a gift.
Yeah.
Maybe they could be saying, we have a gift to give you.
Yeah,
And if
exactly.
they help somebody find employment, that goes a long way in writing a check even after you've graduated. So no, I think that's super, super interesting. So to conclude, how do we help our partners figure out how to get started with Kaplan? Are there minimum requirements? It sounds like it could be an evolution in partnership. How would you suggest a school get started? By department? What are some of the ways that you've gone from just MCAT to nursing
Everything.
to everything? Exactly.
We have obviously we've worked with a lot of schools over the years, even before All Access. So, we did have schools where we had a lot of traction, and going back to Hampton, we'd worked with Hampton for years. And so when we approached them and said, hey, want to do this? And they were like, yeah, we sure do. So that's, there was a proven record of what we had been doing at Hampton and with some of our current partners. Obviously, we've had a lot of new partners come on board. And some of them have just signed on as all access from the very beginning. In some cases, there needs to be proof points. And so we have started with, smaller cohorts of students, focusing on one or two products, maybe MCAT and GRE. And and then move up to a bigger, to include more students and eventually turn it into an all access partnership. Sometimes it makes more sense to stay the course with the path they're already on, like UAB, where it's an embedded course. Maybe at some point UAB will become all access, but they're having such great success with what they're doing right now. So really I think it's starting the conversation, figuring out what a priority is, obviously identifying budget. Like I said before, budgets are tight right now. And this could easily be seen as a discretionary spend, right? But I think when as we've talked through all of this, Lisa, like you're meeting all the students where they are with all access. And so, I think every school has kind of a slightly different path. And that's my team's job to help have that conversation and figure out those pieces. So.
I'm so impressed that you're working with the SUNY system. Can you tell us maybe some creative ways big systems have been able to take advantage of all access?
Yeah, so we do have, and again, I think this is the really illustrates the flexibility of how we work with partners. So obviously with SUNY, we support their EOP students. We also work with, just in New York, we work with EOP across all the SUNY campuses. We work with C-STEP across 30 plus campuses. We work with HIOPO, which is the private school, across another 30 campuses. So we've really, as we talk to either systems or organizations that support students, we have been able to kind of create packages that make sense to support, across multiple campuses. Now those are, state funded or system funded partnerships. We also have a partnership that launched this year with Illinois, where Illinois state government funded all access for 17 schools, all public schools, and then we did a pilot with 5 community colleges, and so that actually went through the state budget, was approved through the budget and then funded directly to support those schools. So again, a lot of flexibility and a lot of creativity, again, based on what partners need and what they want to accomplish.
So where do we send our partners? Where on the Kaplan site can they find more information about the programs that you're offering?
So at kaplan.com, if you look on the top of kaplan.com, there's a university page. And if you click on the university page, you can click on all access. There's a description of kind of all access in general. And then we also have a resource page, which has tons of blog articles. Thank you, Maddie and team. Blog articles, webinars that we've done with partners, case studies, a whole lot of different resources to get people's brains kind of thinking around what all access could look like on their campus.
I mean, one of the things you said earlier was there isn't a school that can't possibly believe that this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of optionality and flexibility, and of course, the budgetary constraints. But I can imagine that this is also a way for schools to differentiate themselves.
Yeah.
It is a tremendous value to students, to faculty, to alumni. I'm excited to continue partnering with Kaplan. I have seen this in my personal life and my professional life. I see it even from where I see investment coming to the platforms that are supporting employability. And so I'm really excited by the work that you all are doing and look forward to helping more schools know about it and get students credentialed and employed and also ready to take interviews and be more confident out in the workforce. So thank you, Kim, for joining us today. We'll be following up and sharing this with our network and really appreciate all the time and the partnership over the last year or so.
Thanks so much for having me, Lisa. It was great.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of EdTech Elevated, powered by Partner in Publishing. We hope you found today's episode inspiring and informative. Don't forget to subscribe and stay connected for more insightful conversations with EdTech leaders and innovators. Until next time, follow us on social to keep up with the latest trends in the world of EdTech. I'm Lisa March, and this is EdTech Elevated.